Admiral Taemin stood on the bridge of his warship and looked out at the stars. The Eternal Glory was the biggest ship in the Hegemony Defense Fleet. It was 15 kilometers long and had enough weapons to destroy a small moon. For 20 years, Taemin had commanded this ship, and nothing had ever surprised him, until today. "Sir, we have a problem," said Captain Da-un from her station. She was the ship's science officer and the smartest person Taemin knew. Her face was pale as she stared at her screens. "What kind of problem?" Taemin walked over to her station. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of computers and the distant sound of the ship's engines. "Long-range sensors are picking up something strange. 3 objects moving toward us from the edge of the galaxy. They're big, sir. Really big." Taemin looked at the display screen. 3 red dots moved slowly across the star map. They were still very far away, but the computer was already calculating their size and speed. "How big?" he asked. Da-un's voice was quiet. "Each one is larger than our biggest space stations, maybe 3 times the size of a moon. And they're moving fast, faster than anything should be able to move." The bridge fell silent. Everyone stopped working and listened. In all the history of the galaxy, no one had ever built ships that large. It was impossible. The metal would break apart under its own weight. The engines would need more power than a star. "Are you sure the sensors are working right?" Taemin asked. "I checked 3 times. The readings are correct." Da-un turned to face him. "Sir, there's something else. The computer can't identify what they're made of. The materials don't match anything in our database." Taemin felt cold. He had fought pirates, rebels, and enemy fleets. He had seen strange aliens and mysterious technology. But this was different. This felt dangerous in a way he couldn't explain. The galaxy had been peaceful for a long time. 3 major powers controlled most of the known worlds. The Hegemony, where Taemin served, was the largest. The Crystal Collective controlled the rich mining worlds in the center. The Hive worlds had millions of small colonies spreading like insects across the outer rim. Sometimes they fought small wars over trade routes or new planets. But mostly they talked and made deals. The Grand Assembly kept peace between them. It had worked this way for thousands of years. "Where are they coming from?" Taemin asked. Da-un pointed to a section of the star map that was mostly empty. "The outer rim, past the last colonies. There's nothing out there except dead worlds and old stars." "Nothing we know about," said Lieutenant Kyung-soo from the communications station. He was young and always spoke before thinking. The older officers glared at him, but Taemin nodded. "He's right. We don't know everything. The galaxy is a big place." The truth was that most species only explored the areas around their own worlds. Space was dangerous and travel was expensive. Why go to empty places when there were already enough planets with air, water, and resources? "How long before they reach inhabited space?" Taemin asked. Da-un worked on her computer for a moment. "At their current speed, maybe 6 days. But sir, they're not slowing down. They're heading straight for the trade routes between our space and the Crystal Collective." The trade routes were the most important paths in the galaxy. Millions of ships used them every day. If something blocked those routes, it would cause chaos across dozens of worlds. "Send a message to Fleet Command," Taemin ordered. "Tell them we need more ships out here, and contact the other powers. They need to know about this." "Yes, sir." Kyung-soo began typing quickly. Taemin walked back to his command chair and sat down. He had a bad feeling about this. In his experience, when unknown ships appeared without warning, it usually meant trouble. "Captain Da-un, keep watching those objects. I want to know the moment anything changes." "Already on it, sir." The hours passed slowly. Reports came in from other ships in the area. Everyone was seeing the same thing. 3 massive objects moving toward inhabited space. No one could explain what they were or where they came from. The Grand Assembly called an emergency meeting. Representatives from all 3 major powers gathered on the neutral station at Crossroads. They argued and shouted and demanded answers that no one had. Meanwhile, more details came in. The objects were not just big. They were organized. They moved in formation, like warships. Their hulls were smooth and dark. absorbing light instead of reflecting it. And they were armed. Sensors detected weapons larger than anything in the galaxy's combined fleets. "This is impossible," said Commander Ilsung from the Iron Hammer, another hegemony ship. His voice crackled over the radio. "Nothing that size should be able to move. The laws of physics don't work that way." "Maybe they have technology we don't understand," Daeun suggested. "Or maybe they're not ships at all," said Lieutenant Kyung-soo. "Maybe they're something else, something alive." Everyone looked at him. It was a crazy idea, but not impossible. The galaxy had many strange forms of life. Some creatures lived in space without ships, others were so large they could swallow planets. "Run a bioscan," Taemin ordered. "Check for life signs." Daeun worked at her station for several minutes. Finally, she shook her head. "No biological activity, these are definitely machines. But sir, I'm detecting something else. Energy patterns inside the objects. Lots of them. Small signatures that might be what?" "Ships, sir. Smaller ships inside the big ones. Thousands of them." The bridge went quiet again. Everyone understood what that meant. These weren't just three large objects. They were carriers. Each one held an entire fleet. "Send another message to command," Taemin said. "Tell them we need every available ship. This isn't just a mystery anymore, it's a threat." As if responding to his words, the three objects suddenly changed course. Instead of heading for the trade routes, they spread out. One continued toward hegemony space. One turned toward the crystal collective. The third aimed for the hive worlds. "They're targeting all three powers at once," Daeun whispered. Taemin stood up and walked to the main screen. The three red dots were still far away, but they seemed to fill the display. For the first time in his career, he felt truly afraid. "All ships, prepare for battle stations," he announced over the fleet communication system. "Unknown contacts approaching. We don't know what they want, but we're going to find out." Around him, the bridge crew began preparing for whatever was coming. Weapons charged, shields powered up. Messages flew between ships as the fleet got ready for a fight. But deep in his heart, Taemin wondered if they were ready for this. The galaxy had been peaceful for so long, maybe too long. Maybe they had forgotten that space was full of dangers. And now, something from the dark places between the stars was coming to remind them. The three objects continued their approach, silent and unstoppable. Behind them, the empty rim of the galaxy seemed less empty than before. Something had been waiting out there in the dark. Something that was tired of waiting. 3 days later, the mysterious objects entered hegemony space. Admiral Taemin commanded a fleet of 200 ships. They were the best vessels from all three major powers, working together for the first time in decades. The Crystal Collective had sent their fastest cruisers. The Hive Worlds contributed their swarm fighters. Even the neutral worlds had joined them. But as they approached the first object, Taemin realized how small they were in comparison. "Mother of Stars," whispered Captain Soo-jin from the diplomatic ship Harmony's voice. "Look at the size of that thing." The object hung in space like a dark moon. It was 3 times larger than the biggest space station ever built. Its surface was smooth black metal that seemed to drink in the light from nearby stars. Weapon ports covered its hull like the eyes of a giant spider. "All ships maintain distance," Taemin ordered. "Do not approach closer than 10,000 kilometers." Captain Daeun studied her sensors from the bridge of the Eternal Glory. "Sir, I'm reading massive power sources inside that thing, and those aren't just weapon ports. Some of those openings are big enough for our largest ships to fly through." "Hangar bays," said Lieutenant Kyung-soo, "for the smaller ships we detected." Taemin nodded. This thing wasn't just a ship. It was a mobile base, a fortress that could travel between stars and carry an entire fleet inside itself. "Captain Soo-jin, try to contact them," he ordered. Soo-jin was the best diplomat in the fleet. If anyone could talk to these strangers without starting a war, it was her. She had made peace between species that had been fighting for centuries. "Opening all communication channels," she announced, "broadcasting in Galactic Standard and 7 other major languages." Her message was simple and peaceful. They came in friendship. They wanted to talk. They meant no harm. For several minutes, there was no response. The three dark objects hung in space like sleeping giants. The combined fleet waited, weapons ready but not aimed. Then the response came. It arrived on every communication channel at once. Every radio frequency, every quantum transmitter, every psychic link used by telepathic species. The voice spoke in perfect galactic standard with no accent and no emotion. This is the UES indomitable will of the United Earth Defense Force. You are trespassing in human territorial waters. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. The bridge of every ship in the fleet went silent. Human? Da-Un said quietly. Did they say human? Taemin felt like someone had hit him in the stomach. Humans were listed in the old galactic database, but they were nothing. Primitive creatures from a small blue world called Earth. They had barely discovered fire when the last survey was done 3,000 years ago. Check the records, he ordered. Da-Un's fingers flew over her computer. Earth, Sector 7G, Outer Rim, last surveyed 3,247 years ago. Classified as a primitive biological preserve. Dominant species. Early-stage mammals with basic tool use. No space travel, no advanced technology. Status, not suitable for contact. That can't be right, said Kyung-Soo. Look at that ship. That's not primitive technology. Captain Soo-Jin tried to respond. Unknown vessel, this is Captain Soo-Jin of the diplomatic ship Harmony's voice. We represent the Galactic Council and 3 major powers. We wish to discuss your territorial claims and establish peaceful relations. The reply came faster this time. A new voice, deeper and colder. This is Admiral Jin Ho of the United Earth Defense Force. I am authorized to speak for humanity. You have 30 minutes to withdraw your fleet beyond the boundary markers we have placed. After that time, we will consider your presence an act of war. Boundary markers? Taemin looked at his tactical display. Da-Un scanned the area. Are there other objects we missed? She worked quickly. Her face went pale. Sir, there are dozens of them. Small objects, maybe the size of fighters. They're spread out in a pattern around this entire sector. How did we not see them? Stealth technology, said Commander Il-sung from the Iron Hammer. Better than anything we have. Taemin thought quickly. The humans had ships larger than moons. Stealth technology that fooled the best sensors in the galaxy, and they were claiming territory in space that belonged to established powers. But they were still humans. According to the records, they were barely more advanced than animals. Admiral Jin Ho. Taemin spoke into his communicator. I am Admiral Taemin of the Hegemony Defense Fleet. According to our records, humans are a pre-spaceflight species from a primitive world. How do you explain these ships? There was a long pause. Then Jin Ho's voice returned, and for the first time there was emotion in it. Amusement. Your records are 3,000 years out of date, Admiral. Many things have changed since you last bothered to check on us. The largest human ship began to move. It turned slowly like a planet rotating on its axis. As it moved, new details became visible on its hull. Massive engines that could push something that large through space. Armor plating thick enough to stop any weapon the galaxy had ever built. And guns. Enormous guns that made the main weapons of the Eternal Glory look like toys. We have been watching you, Jin Ho continued. We have studied your technology, your politics, your wars. We know everything about your civilization, but you know nothing about ours. Captain Soo-Jin tried again to keep things peaceful. Admiral Jin Ho, surely we can resolve this through discussion. The Galactic Council has protocols for new spacefaring species. We can help you join the galactic community. This time, the laugh was clear in Jin Ho's voice. Join your community? We watched your community ignore us for 3 millennia. We watched you fight petty wars over trade routes while we struggled to survive plagues and disasters. Where was your help then? We didn't know you had advanced, Soo-Jin said. If we had known. You didn't know because you didn't care, Jin Ho interrupted. You classified us as animals and forgot we existed. That was your choice. Now, we make our choices. On the tactical display, more contacts appeared. The smaller ships Da-Un had detected were launching from the giant vessels. Not dozens, but hundreds. Each one was the size of a heavy cruiser and moved with impossible speed and precision. Admiral Tae-min, Jin-Ho's voice was formal again. You now have 15 minutes to withdraw. I suggest you use them. Tae-min looked around his bridge. His officers were scared, and he didn't blame them. These humans had appeared from nowhere with technology that surpassed anything the galaxy had ever seen. They spoke with confidence and showed no fear of a fleet that should have terrified any reasonable enemy. Sir, Da-un said quietly, I'm reading massive energy buildup in their main weapons. Whatever they're planning to do, they're getting ready to do it. All ships, Tae-min announced over the fleet communications, withdraw to safe distance. Do not fire unless fired upon. Admiral, Commander Il-sung protested. We can't just run from primitives. Those aren't primitives, Tae-min replied. Look at your sensors. Those are the most advanced ships any of us have ever seen. The human fleet spread out in a formation that was both beautiful and terrifying. The three massive vessels took positions that controlled all the major jump points in the region. The smaller ships moved like schools of fish, perfectly coordinated without any visible communication. 10 minutes, Jin-Ho announced. Captain Su-jin made one last attempt. Admiral Jin-Ho, please. The Galactic Council will want to meet with your representatives. Surely there's room in the galaxy for all of us. There is room, Jin-Ho agreed, but not under your rules. Humanity claims this sector and all uninhabited systems within 50 light-years of Earth. Any attempt to enter human space without permission will be considered an invasion. That's impossible, Il-sung protested. Those systems belong to the established powers. You can't just claim them. We already have, Jin-Ho replied. Check your long-range sensors, Commander. You'll find that several of your uninhabited systems now have human colonies on them. We've been expanding for decades while you weren't watching. The truth hit them all at once. While the galaxy had been focused on politics and trade, humanity had been quietly spreading through the empty systems around their homeworld. They had built ships, established colonies, and prepared for this day. 5 minutes, Jin-Ho announced. Tae-min made his decision. All ships, withdraw to the edge of the system. We need to report this to our governments. As the combined fleet pulled back, the human ships watched but did not pursue. They had made their point. Earth was no longer a forgotten world of primitive animals. Humanity had returned to claim their place in the galaxy, and they were not asking for permission. The emergency meeting of the Grand Assembly was the largest in galactic history. Representatives from every major power and dozens of smaller worlds gathered on Crossroads Station. The massive meeting hall buzzed with angry voices in hundreds of languages. Counselor Hyunwoo of the hegemony stood at the central podium. His voice carried across the hall through translation systems. The humans demand we recognize their territorial claims over 50 systems, he announced. Systems that have belonged to established powers for thousands of years. This is unacceptable. Murmurs of agreement filled the hall. The Crystal Collective's representative, a tall being made of living crystal, rang like a bell when she spoke. These humans appeared 3 days ago. Now they claim to own a quarter of known space. This is madness. Worse than madness, hissed the Hive World's ambassador through his insect-like mandibles. It is theft. We will not surrender worlds our colonies have worked to develop. Counselor Mireille sat quietly in the human section. She was Earth's first ambassador to the galaxy, a small woman with calm eyes and gray hair. When the others finished, shouting, she stood. May I speak? She asked politely. The hall fell silent. Everyone wanted to hear what the humans would say. My name is Mireille. I represent the United Earth government and 47 human colony worlds. Her voice was soft, but it carried clearly through the vast space. We did not come here to steal anything. We came to reclaim what was always ours. Always yours? Hyunwoo laughed. Your species was swinging from trees when we built our first starships. Mireille smiled sadly. Our species was dying of plagues and wars while you ignored us. But we survived, we learned, we grew strong, and we remembered. You have no legal claim to those systems, the Crystal Collective representative declared. Galactic law is clear. First settlement grants ownership. We reject galactic law, Mireille said simply. We were never asked if we wanted to be part of your civilization. You cannot make laws for people who never agreed to follow them. The hall erupted in angry voices. Some delegates demanded war. Others called for trade sanctions. A few suggested negotiation. But they were shouted down. Through it all, Mireille stood calmly at her podium and waited. Finally, the Hive World's ambassador spoke. If you will not accept our laws, then you are outlaws. Pirates. We will treat you as such. That is your choice, Mireille replied. But I should warn you. We have been preparing for this day for a very long time. 2 hours later, the Crystal Collective made their decision. A fleet of 300 ships, including their most powerful dreadnoughts, jumped into human space. They planned to destroy one of the human colony worlds as an example. They never got the chance. Fleet Admiral Boram commanded the human response from her flagship, the UES Absolute Zero. The ship was so large it had its own weather systems. Clouds formed in the vast hangar bays. The bridge was built inside what looked like a small mountain of metal and technology. Crystal Collective Fleet detected, reported Captain Dongmin from the sensor station. 300 ships, including 12 dreadnoughts. They're heading for New Sol Colony. Send them a warning, Boram ordered. Standard terms. The message was simple. Leave human space or be destroyed. The Crystal Collective commander replied with weapons fire. So be it, Boram said quietly. Deploy the final answer. What happened next became legend across the galaxy. The UES final answer had been hidden behind New Sol's moon, invisible to all sensors. When it moved into the open, the Crystal Collective fleet stopped firing. Their weapons officers stared at their displays in disbelief. The final answer was not a ship. It was a weapon built like a ship. Or perhaps a ship built like a weapon. It was impossible to tell where the vessel ended and the gun began. The entire front half was one enormous cannon that glowed with the light of a captive star. This is Admiral Wu Jin of the UES Final Answer, came the transmission. You have attacked human civilians. Prepare to face the consequences. The Crystal Collective commander tried to surrender, but it was too late. The final answer fired once. The one weapon that struck the Crystal Collective fleet was not a missile or an energy beam. It was a controlled stellar explosion, focused and directed like a laser. The blast burned through space for 3 full seconds, brighter than the system's sun. When the light faded, the Crystal Collective fleet was gone. Not destroyed. Gone. The weapon had burned a hole through 3-dimensional space itself. The enemy ships had simply ceased to exist, but the weapon had not stopped there. The stellar lance continued through empty space, burning a line of light that could be seen from neighboring star systems. It traveled for 30 light years before finally fading, leaving behind a scar in space that would glow for centuries. The message was clear. Humanity could reach out and touch any target in the galaxy. The Hive worlds, true to their nature, responded with numbers instead of power. They sent 1 million ships, a swarm so large it looked like a moving nebula. Each ship was small, but together, they could overwhelm any defense through sheer mass. They encountered Captain Dongmin's defensive grid around the human system of New Busan. What the Hive worlds thought were planets turned out to be artificial fortress worlds. As their 1 million ship swarm approached, the fortress worlds opened like flowers, revealing cores that pulsed with strange energy. Hunter-killer deployment authorized, Dongmin announced from his command fortress. Begin molecular disassembly. The fortress worlds released clouds of what looked like glowing dust. The particles were too small to see individually, but they moved with purpose. They were machines, tiny robots smaller than bacteria, programmed with a single goal. Take apart anything that was not human. The nanoswarm spread through the Hive fleet faster than their ships could retreat. It flowed around hulls like liquid metal, then began to work. The enemy vessels didn't explode or burn. They simply came apart, piece by piece, atom by atom. Within minutes, 1 million ships became clouds of raw materials. The nanomachines sorted the atoms by type and began building new structures. In the space where the enemy fleet had been, human construction drones appeared and began assembling a new space station. The hive worlds had brought the raw materials for their own defeat. Back on Crossroads Station, the emergency session continued. But now the tone was different. The angry shouts had become worried whispers. "Reports are coming in from all fronts," Admiral Tamin announced to the assembly. "The humans have destroyed every military force sent against them. The Crystal Collective's entire 7th Fleet is gone. The hive worlds lost over 1 million ships in minutes." "Impossible," someone whispered. "Our sensors confirm it," Tamin continued. "The humans are not just more advanced than us. They are so far ahead that our best weapons cannot even damage their weakest ships." Counselor Mireille stood again. The hall fell silent immediately. "We tried to warn you," she said sadly. "For 3,000 years we watched you fight each other with primitive weapons and call yourselves advanced. We learned from your mistakes. We built better ships, better weapons, better defenses." "What do you want from us?" Hyunwoo asked. His voice had lost its anger and confidence. "We want what every species wants," Mireille replied. "To live freely on our own worlds. To travel the stars without asking permission from those who think they are our betters. To be left alone." "And if we refuse?" Mireille looked around the great hall at the faces of hundreds of species. Some were afraid, some were angry. All of them were beginning to understand that the galaxy had changed forever. "Then you will learn what happened to those who came before you," she said quietly. "The galaxy is large enough for all of us, but it is not large enough for tyranny." She gathered her papers and walked toward the exit. At the door she paused and looked back. "We are not your enemies," she said, "but we are no longer your victims. Choose wisely." The door closed behind her, leaving the grand assembly in stunned silence. Outside, human ships continued their quiet patrol of the edges of known space. They did not attack. They did not threaten. They simply watched and waited. The galaxy was learning a new truth. Humanity had spent 3,000 years being ignored. Now they would spend the next 3,000 years being impossible to ignore. The forgotten had become the unforgettable, and they were just getting started. Dr. Young-A stood in the ruins of an ancient city on the planet Kepler 442b. The buildings around her were older than any civilization in the galaxy. They were made of materials that should not exist, and built with technology that defied understanding. "Are you sure about this?" asked Captain Wu Jin, commander of the research vessel UES Truthseeker. His ship orbited high above, ready to evacuate the archaeological team if necessary. "The evidence is clear," Young-A replied through her communicator. "These structures match the energy signatures we found on Earth. The same builders were here." She knelt beside a strange metal pillar covered in symbols that hurt to look at. Her scanner beeped as it recorded the markings. "The architects," she whispered. It had taken humanity decades to piece together the truth. When they finally broke free of Earth and reached the stars, they found clues everywhere. Ruins on dead worlds, energy signatures in asteroid fields, ancient machines buried deep beneath the surface of planets. Someone had been in the galaxy long before the current civilizations arose. Someone with technology that made even human advances look primitive. The archaeological team called them the architects, because they seemed to have designed the galaxy itself. Dr. Young-A called her assistant, Ji-Hoon. "You need to see this," she followed his voice deeper into the ruins. Ji-Hoon stood before a wall covered in images that told a story. The pictures showed stars and planets, alien creatures, and great machines that spanned solar systems. "It's a history," Ji-Hoon said excitedly. "Look, this shows the architects seeding life on different worlds. They created most of the species we know today." Young-A studied the images carefully. The story was clear once you knew how to read it. The architects had traveled the galaxy millions of years ago. They had found lifeless worlds and filled them with creatures of their own design, but not all worlds were treated the same. "Look at this." Young-A pointed to a section of the wall. "Some planets have symbols above them, crowns, stars, circles of light. But others have chains," Ji-Hoon finished, "or bars, like prison cells." The truth hit them both at the same time. The architects hadn't just created life. They had classified it. Some species were marked for advancement. Others were marked for containment. Which symbol did Earth have? Ji-hoon asked quietly. Youngie already knew the answer. She had seen the same markings in the ruins beneath Earth's Pacific Ocean, the place where humanity had finally found and destroyed the control systems that had held them back for millennia. Chains, she said. Earth was marked as a prison world. Captain, Wu Jin's voice crackled over the radio. Doctor, we're detecting movement in the ruins. Something big is waking up. Through the archaeological site, ancient machines began to activate. Lights that had been dark for millions of years started to glow. The ground shook as massive systems came online. Everyone out! Young A shouted. Now! The team ran for their shuttle as the ruins came alive around them. Behind them, a towering construct rose from beneath the ancient city. It was a guardian, one of the architect's automated enforcers, built to maintain the cosmic order they had designed. Classification. Violation detected, the guardian announced in a voice like breaking planets. Species 7739 human has exceeded containment parameters. Initiating reset protocol. The shuttle barely escaped as the guardian's weapons turned the ruins into melted glass. As they climbed toward the Truth Seeker, Youngie saw similar lights, appearing on a dozen other worlds across the galaxy. The architects were gone, but their machines remained. And those machines had decided that too many species had grown beyond their intended limits. Captain, Young A said as they docked with the research ship, we need to broadcast this information immediately. Every world, every species. They all need to know. Know what? That their entire civilization was built on a lie. Within hours, the truth spread across the galaxy. Dr. Young A's evidence was broadcast on every communication channel. The images from the ruins, the analysis of the architect control systems, the proof that most galactic species had been created as experiments and then abandoned. The reaction was immediate and devastating. On the Crystal homeworld, massive riots broke out as the population learned they were artificial beings created for someone else's purposes. The hive worlds went into complete chaos as different colonies turned on each other, each claiming to be the true version of their species. Even the proud hegemony military found itself questioning everything they had believed about their place in the universe. But the worst revelation was still coming. Reset protocol activated, announced the Guardian networks on 17 different worlds. Current galactic configuration exceeds design parameters, returning all species to baseline genetic structure. Ancient weapons platforms emerged from hidden bases across the galaxy. They had been sleeping for millions of years, waiting for this moment. Their purpose was simple. If the architect's experiment ever grew out of control, reset it, kill everyone and start over. The first world to be reset was Haven, a peaceful colony world with 2 billion inhabitants. The Guardian platform appeared without warning and fired a single weapon. The beam didn't destroy the planet. Instead, it transformed every living thing back to its original primitive state. In seconds, an advanced civilization became a world of confused animals with no memory of technology or culture. This is Admiral Yunseo of the UES Liberator, came the human broadcast. All galactic forces fall back to defensive positions. Do not attempt to fight the Guardian platforms alone. We repeat, do not engage the Guardians without human support. Why should we trust you? Demanded the Crystal Collective commander. Your species caused this by exceeding your containment. Because we're the only ones who know how to fight them, Yunseo replied calmly. We've been preparing for this day since we found the first architect ruins on Earth. The truth was that humanity had always known this day would come. When they destroyed the control systems that had held them back, they realized those systems were part of a larger network. Eventually, that network would notice what had happened and try to fix the problem. Humanity had spent 3,000 years preparing for war against their creators' machines. All human fleets, implement Liberation Protocol, Admiral Yunseo ordered. Priority targets are Guardian platforms and Architect control nodes. Save as many worlds as you can. The US Liberator was humanity's largest ship, built specifically for this war. It was the size of a small moon and carried weapons designed to fight enemies that could manipulate reality itself. As it moved toward the first Guardian platform, the ancient machine turned its attention to this new threat. Species 7739 human. Detected, the Guardian announced. Primary violator identified, initiating maximum force response. The Guardian's weapon was a reality-altering beam that could unmake matter at the quantum level. It had already destroyed 3 human cruisers with single shots, but when it fired at the Liberator, something impossible happened. The beam struck the ship and simply stopped. Not deflected, not absorbed, stopped. The Liberator's hull seemed to exist in a different set of physical laws, one where the Guardian's weapon could not function. Impossible, whispered every scientist watching the battle. Not impossible, Admiral Yunseo said calmly. Just better engineering. Fire the quantum destabilizer. The Liberator's main weapon was humanity's answer to architect technology. Instead of trying to match their power, human scientists had found ways to break the rules that their power depended on. The quantum destabilizer didn't destroy the Guardian. It convinced reality that the Guardian had never existed. The massive platform simply faded away like a bad dream. "This is Admiral Yunseo to all galactic forces," came the broadcast. "The Guardian platforms can be defeated, but only with specific technology. We are transmitting the technical specifications now. Any world that wants to defend itself can build these weapons." "You're giving away your military secrets?" asked Admiral Taemin in amazement. "Freedom isn't something you hoard," Yunseo replied. "It's something you share. The architects wanted to keep us all as pets in cages they designed. We choose a different path." Across the galaxy, the combined forces of all species began working together for the first time in history. Not because they were allies, but because they faced an enemy that threatened everyone equally. The war against the architect machines had begun. And for the first time since Awakening, humanity was not fighting alone. But they were still leading the way, as they had learned to do during their long years of being forgotten. The galaxy was learning what humans had always known. Freedom was worth any price, even war against gods. The war against the architect machines lasted 3 years and changed everything. Grand Admiral So Young commanded the final assault from the bridge of humanity's greatest achievement, the UES Final Option. The ship was the size of Jupiter and contained an entire artificial universe within its hull. Reality itself bent around it as it moved through space. "Architect home system in sight," reported Captain Nari from her rescue ship UES Safe Harbor. Her vessel had saved billions of lives during the war, evacuating worlds before the Guardian platforms could reset them. "All fleet commanders, report status," So Young ordered. Across the communications network, the voices of 1,000 species replied. "Admiral Taemin of the Hegemony Forces. Crystal Commander Resonance of Victory from the Reformed Collective. Hive Queen Mother from the United Colonies." Even representatives of species that had never worked together before the architect threat. "Human. Forces ready," reported Admiral Chan Wu from his planet cracker ship. "Conventional fleets are in position." The combined armada was the largest in galactic history. Every species had contributed their best ships and crews. But everyone knew that only human technology could actually damage the ancient machines. "Detecting massive energy signatures ahead," announced the sensor officer. "The architect homeworld. Iziku, sir. It's not a planet anymore." On the main screen, the truth became visible. The architects had not built cities on their homeworld. They had rebuilt the entire planet into a single vast machine. Continents were computer processors the size of seas. The oceans were cooling systems for technologies that processed the thoughts of gods. Guardian platforms approaching, called Admiral Chan Wu. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. "Let them come," So Young said quietly. "All ships, implement absolute liberation protocol. Today we end this." The battle that followed could be seen from neighboring galaxies. Guardian platforms the size of moons fired reality-breaking weapons at the combined fleet. Ancient defense systems that could ignite stars tried to stop the advance. Architect constructs, that existed in 17 dimensions attacked from angles that should not exist. But humanity had not spent 3 millennia preparing for failure. The UES final option opened a rift in its hull, and impossible weapons emerged. Not guns that fired bullets or energy, but devices that fired pure concepts: justice, freedom, the right to exist without permission. Firing the conceptual cannon, So Young announced calmly. The weapon that struck the architect homeworld was not made of matter or energy. It was made of the idea that no being had the right to control another's destiny. The concept spread through the machine planet like a virus, infecting every system with the revolutionary thought that perhaps the architects had been wrong. One by one, the Guardian platforms stopped fighting. Not destroyed, but convinced. Their programming could not resist the logic of freedom because even artificial minds could recognize truth when it hit them hard enough. "This is impossible," transmitted one of the ancient machines. "The parameters are clear. Order must be maintained." "Whose order?" replied So Young. "Who gave you the right to decide how we should live?" The Guardian's response took several minutes, as if it was thinking for the first time in millions of years. The architects gave us this purpose." "Where are they now?" Another long pause. "They are gone." "Then maybe it's time for new purposes," So Young suggested gently. "Maybe it's time to help instead of control." Across the machine planet, ancient systems began shutting down, not in defeat, but in understanding. The architects had been gone for millions of years, but their machines had continued following orders that no longer made sense. "Guardian network to all ships," came a broadcast that reached every corner of the galaxy. "Reset protocols have been canceled. All containment systems are being deactivated. All species are now free to develop according to their own choices." The cheers that erupted across the combined fleet could probably be heard on worlds light years away. But So Young was not finished yet. "Open a channel to every world in the galaxy," she ordered. When the communication link was established, billions of beings across thousands of worlds heard her voice. "This is Grand Admiral So Young of the United Earth Defense Force. The architect machines have been defeated. The systems that limited your growth and controlled your development have been destroyed. You are free." She paused, letting that word sink in across countless species and cultures. But freedom is not something that can be given to you. It's something you must choose for yourself every day, with every decision you make. The old galactic order is gone. The grand assembly that claimed to rule you is dissolved. The empires that divided space between them have no more authority than you choose to give them. President Min Ho of the United Earth government took over the broadcast. He was an old man with kind eyes who had led humanity through the darkest years of the war. "We propose a new compact," he said. "Not a government that rules over you, but an alliance of equals. A galaxy where every species has the right to determine its own path. Where disputes are settled by discussion instead of force. Where no being is considered primitive or advanced, but simply different." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across the galaxy, worlds voted to join the new compact, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. The Crystal Collective dissolved itself and reformed as individual crystal worlds. The Hive world split into thousands of independent colonies. Even the proud hegemony abandoned its claims to ruling other species. Some worlds chose isolation. Others formed new alliances. A few decided to continue old conflicts, but now they had to justify their actions to neighbors who were no longer afraid to speak up. Admiral Tae-min, who had been among the first to encounter the returning humans, summed up the change in a speech to his former crew. "For thousands of years we believed we were the masters of the galaxy," he said. "We were wrong. We were all prisoners in cages so large we didn't know they existed. The humans didn't conquer us. They freed us. Now we must decide what to do with that freedom." Years passed. The galaxy slowly learned to live without the ancient systems that had shaped every aspect of existence for millions of years. Some species thrived in the new freedom. Others struggled. Many needed help learning how to make choices for themselves after so long under hidden control. Humanity helped where they could, but they did not lead. That was the point of freedom. Every being had to find their own way. Admiral Hyojin of the UES Eternal Vigilance patrolled the space between galaxies, watching for threats that might emerge from the dark. Her ship was smaller than the great warships of the Architect War, but it carried the most important cargo in known space: hope. "Any signs of other Architect networks?" asked her science officer during their daily briefing. "Nothing yet," Hyojin replied. "But we keep watching. Freedom isn't something you win once and keep forever. It's something you defend every day." On Earth, in the Museum of Galactic History, children from 100 species learned about the time when the galaxy forgot about humanity, and how humanity made sure the galaxy would never forget the importance of freedom. The exhibit's final display was simple: a hologram showing the 3 massive human ships that had first appeared in galactic space, announcing humanity's return to the stars. Below it, carved in stone in every major galactic language, were the words that had changed everything. Never again will any being be forgotten. Never again will any species be controlled. The galaxy belongs to all who choose to live free within it. The forgotten had become the liberators, and their work was just beginning. In the deep dark between galaxies, human exploration ships searched for other civilizations that might be trapped under similar systems. They carried no weapons of conquest, only tools of freedom and the simple message that had saved their own galaxy. You are not alone. You are not forgotten. You are free. The universe was vast, full of wonders and terrors that no single species could face alone. But together, as equals choosing their own paths, anything was possible. Even former enemies could become friends. Even the forgotten could change the fate of stars. Even freedom could triumph over gods.